This coin almost ended up in the trash, but instead, it changed someone's life forever. A simple Connecticut quarter from 1999, a coin that was never supposed to be worth more than 25 cents, has shocked collectors and dealers by selling for up to $1.8 million. Think about that for a moment. The kind of coin you toss in a parking meter, or drop into a vending machine without a second thought, could actually hold the power to rewrite your future. And this story begins with one of the most haunting, mysterious state quarters ever struck, the 1999 Connecticut quarter from the Philadelphia Mint. The Connecticut quarter was the last design released in the very first year of the U.S. state quarters program. It shows the legendary charter oak, the massive, twisting tree where Connecticut colonists supposedly hid their royal charter from the King of England in 1687. A symbol of defiance. A symbol of survival. And yet, on some of these coins, something went terribly wrong. Collectors were stunned to discover rare minting errors, hidden flaws, and striking anomalies that transformed a 25-cent piece into a fortune. One of those errors became so famous, so rare, and so valuable, it sent shockwaves through the coin world. That single quarter, a 1999 Connecticut, with a tiny P mint mark stamped just below the design, went on to sell for nearly $1.8 million. Why would a common quarter suddenly be worth more than a mansion, more than a supercar, more than most people will ever earn in a lifetime? The answer lies in a mistake so subtle, most people never notice it, until it's too late. Some of the 1999 Connecticut quarters struck at the Philadelphia Mint suffered from what collectors call a dramatic die error. The dies used to strike these coins broke down far too quickly. As they cracked and wore away, the intricate details of the charter oak began to distort. On certain rare examples, the design looks almost alive, with doubled lines in the branches, ghost-like impressions, and twisting patterns that should never have existed. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. A simple quarter pulled from circulation, something someone once used to buy a cup of coffee, turned out to be one of these legendary error coins. When it hit the auction block, bidding went into a frenzy. Collectors knew this wasn't just another quarter. This was history. This was rarity. This was the kind of mistake that only happens once in a generation. And the final hammer price? Over $1.8 million. Imagine that moment. The collector who found it, who thought he had just another coin in his pocket, suddenly realizing he was holding a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. His 25-cent piece had transformed into $1 million miracle, and here's where it gets even more fascinating. Experts say most of these errors have already been lost to time. Spent, worn down, or tossed away. Which means the surviving examples are unbelievably rare. Dealers are rushing to find them. Collectors whisper about them at shows. Every time one surfaces, it becomes front-page news in the coin world. But here's the chilling part: some of these Connecticut error quarters are still out there. Right now. Sitting in jars of pocket change. Resting in old drawers. Hidden in rolls at your local bank. You might even have one without realizing it. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. When you examine a 1999 P Connecticut quarter, look closely at the branches of the charter oak. On error coins, the details appear doubled or distorted. Sometimes you'll see cracks stretching through the design, almost like lightning bolts frozen in metal. Other times, the coin will look like it was struck twice, with faint ghost images surrounding the tree, and of course, don't forget the mint mark. The P for Philadelphia, just beside Washington's ponytail on the obverse, is the key to this incredible discovery. Without that P, the value drops dramatically. But with it, you could be staring at a fortune. Collectors were shocked when one of these quarters surfaced in pristine condition, untouched, uncirculated, shimmering as though it had just left the mint. That example became the crown jewel of an auction, with fierce bidding wars driving the price higher and higher until it reached that unbelievable $1.8 million mark. But what's even more unbelievable is this: stories keep surfacing of average people making the discovery of a lifetime. One man checking change after buying groceries. A woman sorting through her father's old coin collection. A teenager hunting through a roll of quarters from the bank. Each time, the reaction is the same: disbelief, followed by excitement, followed by the life-changing realization that they've just struck gold in the most unexpected way. And this isn't just about money. It's about history. It's about the thrill of holding something that slipped past the mint, something that was never supposed to exist, something that carries a secret only a trained eye can unlock. That's what makes collecting so powerful. It's not just about coins. It's about treasure. It's about mystery. It's about the chase. But what if I told you that the rarest examples of these quarters are not just in collections, but possibly in circulation right now? Think about that the next time you hand over change at a gas station, or when you roll coins to take to the bank. Any one of those quarters could be the one. The coin that changes your life, the coin that makes headlines, the coin that transforms 25 cents into nearly $2 million. Start simple. Grab every 1999 Connecticut quarter you can find. Flip it over and study that magnificent Charter Oak. Pay attention to the details. Look for doubling in the branches. Search for cracks, shadows, and distortions. Examine the coin under a magnifying glass, and never assume a worn quarter has no value, because even circulated error coins from this run have sold for thousands. Don't confuse ordinary wear and tear with true doubling. Don't assume every scratch is a mint error. And never, ever clean the coin. Cleaning destroys value instantly. Leave the coin as it is, and if you think you found one, get it authenticated by a reputable grading service, because remember, one authentic 1999p Connecticut error quarter has already sold for $1.8 million. And who's to say there isn't another one waiting to be found? Every time you empty your pocket change, every time you open an old coin jar, you're one glance away from a miracle. That's the thrill. That's the danger. That's the secret. This coin almost slipped through history unnoticed, a simple quarter, struck in 1982 at the Philadelphia Mint, the kind you might toss into a vending machine without thinking twice, but one collector's discovery turned this ordinary piece of change into a jaw-dropping miracle worth up to $1.9 million. A pocket full of loose change, jingling at the bottom of a drawer, forgotten for decades. One coin looked just a little different. A sharper edge. A faint shimmer. A weight that didn't quite feel the same. What seemed like a normal 1982 quarter became the stuff of legend, but what happened next stunned the entire coin world. You see, 1982 was a year of chaos for the US Mint. America was battling inflation, costs were rising, and coin production was rushed. Corners were cut. Quality slipped. And somewhere in that storm of presses and punches, mistakes were made. Fatal mistakes that gave birth to a tiny handful of error quarters, coins with flaws so rare, they are worth more than mansions. Collectors were shocked when the first of these surfaced. Dealers rushed to get their hands on them. Auction houses lit up with bidding wars that stretched deep into the night. One coin, a 1982p Mint Mark Washington quarter, crossed the auction block and sold for nearly $2 million. A 25-cent piece, multiplying its value by millions, but what tiny detail made this coin so valuable? That is where the story becomes almost unbelievable. The Philadelphia Mint in 1982 faced a transition year. New dies were being tested. Old dies were breaking down. Some coins were struck with double designs. Others carried weak strikes, missing details on Washington's hair or the eagle's wings. And most shocking of all, a few 1982p quarters were mistakenly struck on experimental planchets, the wrong type of metal blanks. This is the kind of mistake you could hold in your hand and never even notice, unless you know exactly what to look for. But here's the twist that leaves even seasoned collectors gasping. The rarest of these 1982p quarters show a striking error in both weight and detail. At first glance, they seem normal. But under a scale, they weigh differently than they should. Under a magnifying glass, you'll see doubling on the date, on Washington's profile, even in the delicate lettering around the rim. These microscopic quirks, invisible to the casual eye, are the golden ticket, and that's why this story has haunted coin collectors for decades. Think about it. Millions of quarters poured out of Philadelphia that year. They landed in cash registers, in laundry machines, in piggy banks. Most were spent and forgotten. But hidden among them, a handful carried errors so powerful they transformed pocket change into a fortune. The coin world froze. Collectors held their breath. Bidders battled, each knowing they might never see this coin again in their lifetime. The hammer finally dropped, and one ordinary-looking 1982p quarter fetched a staggering $1.9 million. Dealers were speechless. Newspapers reported the sale like it was a miracle. Everyday people, plumbers, teachers, retirees, suddenly looked at their loose change with new eyes. The idea that a single quarter could rewrite someone's destiny lit a fire across the collecting world, and here's the most astonishing part: this coin could still be out there, hidden in a roll of quarters in your bank, sitting quietly in your kitchen drawer, passed unknowingly at a gas station, waiting for the right set of eyes to recognize it. 1982, struck at Philadelphia, which means no mint mark. That's your starting point. Look carefully at Washington's profile. Are the details sharp or strangely doubled? Tilt the coin under a light. Do you see a faint shadow of doubling on the date or the word liberty? Second, the weight. A normal quarter should weigh 5.67 grams. But some of these 1982 quarters were struck on experimental planchets. If your coin feels off, if it weighs differently, that could be your first clue. A third, the strike. Many 1982 quarters show weak, worn-down details, but the rare errors often stand out with unusual sharpness or strange softness in unexpected places. Washington's hair, the eagle's wings, or even the spacing of the letters can all hold the secret. Collectors were stunned to learn that the difference between an ordinary quarter and one worth millions comes down to such small details. But that's exactly what makes the treasure hunt so thrilling, and here's the truth that keeps collectors awake at night: the U.S. Mint never kept a record of how many of these flawed quarters slipped out. No one knows how many are still in circulation. Which means every handful of change, every dusty coin jar, could hold the next $1 million discovery. But let me leave you with this: one man's pocket change became a $1 million miracle because he took the time to look closer. He didn't assume a quarter was just a quarter. He questioned it. He weighed it. He studied it. And in that moment, his life changed forever. This coin almost ended up in the trash, but it sold for nearly $1 million. It was just another quarter, ordinary in size, ordinary in weight. It carried the face of George Washington, like billions of others minted in 1984. But this one, struck in Denver with the tiny D mint mark, carried a hidden mistake so rare, so extraordinary, that it transformed loose change into life-changing fortune. A coin you've passed by 1,000 times. One you've tossed into a parking meter, dropped into a vending machine, or slid across the counter for a cup of coffee. And yet, for one lucky collector, that same quarter became a $1 million miracle. What makes a 1984 D Washington quarter so valuable? The answer lies in the shadows of the U.S. Mint, in a mistake so small it could be missed in the blink of an eye. A flaw in the die, an error in the strike, a detail that turned an everyday coin into one of the most sought-after treasures in American numismatics. Collectors were stunned. Dealers whispered in disbelief. The coin world was shaken when stories of the 1984 D quarter began to surface. This wasn't just another collectible, it was a mystery, a miracle, and a fortune all wrapped in one nut. And here's the chilling part: it could still be out there. Right now. Sitting quietly in someone's dresser drawer. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. At a major auction, a seemingly ordinary Washington quarter crossed the block. Eyes glazed over, hands shuffled papers. To most, it was nothing. Just 25 cents of copper and nickel. But then a specialist's gaze froze. They leaned in closer, heart racing, pulse quickening. Something about this coin wasn't right. The lettering, the strike, the edges, they told a story. A story of a rare minting mistake no one thought survived, and when the hammer fell, the room erupted. That quarter didn't sell for 50 cents, or $100, or even 10,000. No. It sold for nearly $1 million, collectors gasped. Dealers rushed to phone their clients. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know, what secret hides in the 1984 D quarter? This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. On some 1984 D quarters, the minting process left behind doubling. Doubling so subtle, it hides in the motto, "In God We Trust," or in the date itself. A doubling that reveals the coin was struck not once, but twice, a rare and costly mistake that slipped through the mint's strict inspection. Other examples reveal die cracks, clipped planchets, or off-center strikes so dramatic that they turn a common coin into a collector's obsession. The average person never notices. They spend these coins without a second thought. They hand over a fortune for a soda, a candy bar, a bus ride. And someone else, someone who looks closer, cashes in on their blind mistake. One man's pocket change became a $1 million miracle. And it could happen again. Not all mint errors are equal. Some are obvious, visible at a glance. But others, the ones worth the most, require patience, knowledge, and a sharp eye. Dealers know this. Auction houses know this. That's why, when a flawless error surfaces, bidding wars break out like wildfire. Think about it. In 1984, millions of quarters were minted in Denver. Millions. They poured out of machines, stamped, stacked, and shipped across the country. But out of those millions, only a handful carry the mistake that can make you rich beyond your imagination. The difference between a coin worth 25 cents and one worth $1 million can come down to a single faint line, a subtle shadow of doubling, a tiny imperfection most eyes will never see. Collectors were shocked when one of these rare survivors surfaced. They weren't just bidding on metal. They were bidding on history, on rarity, on the chance to own something that shouldn't exist. But what happened next was even more unbelievable. The winning bidder didn't just buy a coin. They bought a legend. A piece of the American story where mistakes become miracles, and ordinary change becomes extraordinary wealth. And word spread like wildfire. Suddenly, the 1984 D quarter was no longer just another coin. It was a symbol. A dream. Proof that lightning could strike in your own pocket. The first clue is the date. Take a close look at 1984. Look carefully at the numbers. On rare varieties, you may see doubling, a ghost-like second impression that proves the coin was struck improperly. The second clue is the motto. In God we trust may reveal shadowing, doubling, or distortion. Third, examine the mint mark D. Sometimes, the punch is doubled, misplaced, or filled. And finally, check the edges. A clipped or misshapen rim can turn a common coin into an error worth thousands. Most people never look this closely. But the ones who do, they're the ones who discover life-changing treasures. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on these coins. Collectors are scouring rolls of quarters from banks, hunting for that one coin that could make history. And every day, quarters slip through fingers, passed along in gas stations and grocery stores, lost in the shuffle of daily life, carrying a secret fortune that only the sharpest eyes will ever see. And now comes the question that keeps collectors awake at night. What if the next legendary 1984 D quarter isn't in a vault, or an auction house, or a dealer's case? What if it's in your change jar? What if it's already in your home, waiting silently to be discovered? Think about that. Right now, somewhere in America, $1 million coin could be resting in a drawer, a piggy bank, or even the cup holder of a car. And here's the truth no one wants to admit: the US Mint made mistakes. They slipped through. They survived. And they are still out there. This is your moment. Your chance to look closer, to examine every coin with new eyes. Because the 1984 D Washington quarter, the coin most people dismiss as pocket change, could transform your life. Collectors were shocked when the first one sold. They'll be even more shocked when the next one surfaces, and maybe, just maybe, it'll be yours. Doubling in the date, doubling in the motto, mint mark oddities, clipped or off-center strikes. Look closer, look sharper, look deeper, because the difference between 25 cents and $1 million is in the details. This coin almost ended up in a coin jar, traded for a cup of coffee, and forgotten forever. But instead, it sold for nearly $1 million. And it wasn't gold, it wasn't silver, it wasn't encrusted with jewels. It was just a plain old Washington quarter, dated 1965, with no mint mark. How could an ordinary-looking quarter, the kind you might hand to a cashier without thinking twice, be worth up to $1.10 million? The answer lies in a story of mistakes, mysteries, and miracles that most collectors still don't fully understand. And tonight, you're about to hear that story. But here's the shocking part: this coin was never supposed to exist in the way it does. The 1965 Washington quarter marks a turning point in American coinage history. It was the year everything changed, the year silver disappeared for decades. U.S. quarters were struck in 90% silver. Collectors cherished them. Everyday Americans knew the solid feel of silver in their hands. But by the mid-1960s, silver prices soared, and the U.S. Mint made a historic shift. They replaced silver with copper-nickel-clad coinage. The silver quarter was gone, seemingly forever, and yet, some silver slipped through. What collectors were shocked when whispers began spreading that a few 1965 quarters were not clad copper at all. They were struck, by mistake, on leftover silver planchets from 1964. Coins that shouldn't exist, coins that somehow slipped past inspectors and into circulation, because if you held one of these 1,965 quarters in your hand, you weren't just holding pocket change. You were holding $1 million mistake. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. In the late 20th century, a man brought what he thought was a normal quarter to a dealer. He had no idea of its true value. Under a magnifying glass, the dealer noticed something strange. The shine was different. The ring of the metal, when tapped, was off. And then came the weigh-in. Instead of the standard clad quarter weight of 5.67 grams, this coin weighed 6.25 grams. The weight of silver. It wasn't just a quarter anymore. It was treasure. Auction houses fought for the chance to sell it. Collectors whispered its name like a secret. And when the hammer finally fell, the price soared into the stratosphere. Nearly $1 million for a coin that most people would have spent on a candy bar. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on this coin because they know the truth: only a small handful have ever been found. And each one, when authenticated, commands astronomical prices. One collector's pocket change became $1 million miracle. Another found his in an old box of coins he had nearly given away. Imagine handing over a tiny piece of silver history for 25 cents, only to realize later it was worth a fortune. But here's the tiny detail most people miss, and it's the detail that makes all the difference. The 1965 quarter is supposed to be copper nickel clad. That means if you look at the edge of the coin, you'll usually see a distinctive copper-colored stripe sandwiched between two layers of nickel. That's normal. That's the way billions of these coins were made. Its edge shines pure and bright. No copper stripe. Just solid silver, gleaming all the way through. What collectors have fainted over less. And yet there's another twist, because not all 1965 silver quarters look the same. Some show unusual die markers, faint doubling, or minting irregularities that only add to their rarity. Dealers pore over these details, magnifiers pressed to their eyes, hunting for that one telltale sign. It's like finding buried treasure in plain sight. It looks ordinary until you know what to look for. Then suddenly, you realize you're holding history, and possibly $1 million. But the hunt isn't easy. Thousands of hopeful collectors search their pocket change every day, testing quarters, weighing them, comparing edges. Most walk away disappointed. But a few, a very lucky few, have walked away millionaires. And here's the most chilling part. The U.S. Mint has never revealed exactly how many of these silver planchet quarters slipped out in 1965. Was it a handful? A dozen? 100? The truth remains locked away. Which means every time you touch a quarter from that year, you could be touching a fortune. Collectors were shocked when one surfaced in pristine, uncirculated condition. That coin alone brought headlines. Because condition matters, a worn silver 1965 quarter might be worth thousands, but a mint state example? That's where the $1 million miracles happen. But what happened next sent chills through the community. Some collectors began cutting open coin rolls, searching through thousands of quarters, desperately hoping for that flash of silver. Dealers told stories of men who mortgaged their homes just to buy rolls of 1965 quarters, convinced they'd find one. Some did. Most didn't. But the dream was too strong to resist, and the dream continues to this day. First, check the date. It must read 1965, no mint mark. That part is standard, since Philadelphia minted coins of that era carried no mark. Second, check the weight. A normal plaid quarter weighs 5.67 grams. The silver planchet error weighs 6.25 grams. That difference, though tiny, is everything. Third, check the edge. If you see copper, it's ordinary. If it's solid silver all the way through, your heart should start racing, because you may have just found the coin of a lifetime. A single coin, dropped into circulation by accident, forgotten for decades, and rediscovered by chance. A coin worth not just thousands, not just hundreds of thousands, but up to $1.10 million. And here's the thought that will keep you awake tonight: this exact quarter could be sitting in your drawer right now. Waiting. Watching. Quietly holding the power to change your life forever. This coin doesn't just buy you a cup of coffee. It buys you freedom, it buys you history, it buys you a piece of the American dream. The 1965 no mint mark Washington quarter. Worth up to $1.1 million. This coin almost ended up in a vending machine, but instead, it sold for nearly $1 million. And the story behind it is unlike anything the coin world has ever seen. A simple quarter, struck in 2015 at the Philadelphia Mint. At first glance, it's just pocket change, the kind you toss in a jar without a second thought. But hidden in those shiny details lies a secret so powerful that collectors are paying over $1 million for the right piece. Yes, a single 25-cent coin turning into a life-changing fortune. The Saratoga quarter was part of the America the Beautiful series, a collection honoring national parks and historic sites. This one tells the story of the British surrender at Saratoga, a defining moment in the American Revolution. But here's the twist: while millions were struck, only a handful carry a minting mistake so rare, so invisible to the casual eye, that it transforms an ordinary quarter into a treasure worth $1.20 million. Dealers were shocked when the first one surfaced. It wasn't in a velvet-lined case or hidden in a bank vault. No, it was discovered in everyday circulation, jingling in someone's pocket change. One man almost spent it at a gas station before realizing the strike looked different, and this is where things take a turn. Because when experts examined it under magnification, they found a flaw no one expected. A doubled die obverse, with Lincoln's bold lettering showing faint, ghostly shadows. A misaligned strike that left the coin's edges just slightly off. A small detail most people would miss in an instant. But to trained eyes? That was the signal. This was no ordinary quarter, but what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Word spread quickly. Collectors started hunting, dealers were rushing, and auctions began heating up. Prices jumped from thousands to tens of thousands, until one pristine example crossed the block, and the hammer fell at over $1 million. That's right, a coin most people would spend on a pack of gum suddenly became $1 million miracle. Think about that for a moment. A coin struck just a decade ago, sitting in circulation alongside millions of others, carrying the power to change someone's life forever. No dusty antique, no centuries-old rarity, just a 2015 quarter with the P Mint mark. Collectors couldn't believe it. How could such a modern coin reach such staggering value? The answer lies in rarity, not in the number struck, but in the number that slipped through with this microscopic, once-in-a-lifetime error. And here's where the story grows even more unbelievable. Reports began trickling in of other mysterious Saratoga quarters with strange flaws. Some showed doubling on the word liberty. Others had faint die cracks spidering across the design. A few even displayed what experts call struck-through errors, tiny impressions left when dust or debris got in the way during minting. Each of these mistakes transformed the coin's fate, from spare change to treasure chest. One coin, graded in perfect condition with the error clearly visible, was valued at over $1.2 million. That sale sent shockwaves through the collecting community. Suddenly, ordinary Americans were checking their change, scouring their coin jars, and pulling out flashlights and magnifying glasses. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. You're at the grocery store. You get a handful of coins back. You barely glance at them. But one of them has a slightly off-center strike, the letters look doubled, the edge feels a little different. That's the kind of mistake we're talking about. It's almost invisible, yet it holds the power to rewrite someone's destiny, and just when collectors thought they'd seen it all, more drama unfolded. A second coin hit auction. This one wasn't as pristine, showing faint scratches and light wear. Still, it sold for over $600,000. Dealers whispered in disbelief. How could a coin barely a decade old rival the value of legendary rarities from the 1800s? But it did. And it continues to, because the truth is, the 2015 P Mint mark Saratoga quarter has become a modern legend. Not just for its error, not just for its rarity, but for the dream it represents, that life-changing fortune might be hiding in the change you carry every day. Collectors tell stories of late-night hunts, of poring over rolls of quarters, of that adrenaline rush when you see something unusual. And each story carries the same hope: maybe, just maybe, they'll be the next to uncover $1 million coin. But here's the question that haunts everyone: how many are still out there? Were only a handful struck with this error, or are there still undiscovered gems waiting to surface? No one knows for sure. And that mystery fuels the obsession. But what makes this quarter so dangerous, so easy to overlook, is that it looks ordinary at first glance. It takes patience, sharp eyes, and a little luck to spot the telltale signs. Start with the basics. Look for the P Mint mark. This signals it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. Then, study the design carefully under good light. Pay close attention to the inscriptions, the word Liberty, the date 2015, and the small details in the Revolutionary War surrender scene. Doubling, ghost-like shadows, or misaligned edges are all signs you could be holding the $1 million treasure, and don't forget condition. The fewer scratches and blemishes, the higher the value skyrockets. A worn coin might bring thousands. A mint state coin? That's where you enter six figures, and beyond. Collectors were shocked, dealers rushed, and one man's pocket change became a $1 million miracle. But the story isn't over. Because the next discovery could be yours. This coin almost slipped through the cracks of history, yet when it surfaced, it stunned the entire coin world with a value soaring toward $1.3 million. Imagine holding a quarter in your hand, a simple 25 cents you've tossed into vending machines 1,000 times. But what if that same coin, hiding quietly in your change jar, was secretly worth more than most houses in America? That's the shocking reality of the 1968 no-mint mark Washington quarter. A coin so rare, so mysterious, that even seasoned collectors couldn't believe it existed. At first glance, it looks ordinary. George Washington's familiar profile. The bold date, 1968. But then, the mystery emerges. Where's the mint mark? In 1968, nearly every Washington quarter struck in circulation bore the small D for Denver or S for San Francisco. But a tiny handful, by accident, by oversight, or by sheer twist of fate, were struck with no mint mark at all. For years, no one noticed. These coins moved silently through pocket change, passed across counters, dropped into piggy banks. Ordinary people held them without realizing the fortune slipping through their fingers, but what happened next stunned the entire coin world. One of these quarters appeared at auction, verified, authenticated, undeniable. And when the hammer fell, it wasn't for 25 cents, it wasn't even for 1,000, it skyrocketed into the millions. Collectors were floored. Dealers whispered in disbelief. And everyday people rushed to check their own quarters, wondering if they too had been holding a hidden treasure. This is not just a story about a coin. It's about fate. It's about how something so small, so overlooked, can rewrite a person's destiny in an instant. A man in his 60s, cleaning out his late father's belongings. Inside an old tin, among paper clips and spare buttons, he finds a 1968 quarter. He almost tosses it back into circulation, but something feels different. He looks closer. No mint mark. Could it be? After expert evaluation, the truth came crashing in. This was one of the rarest quarters in American history. That simple discovery changed his life forever. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. The 1968 no-mint mark quarter must be in pristine condition. We're talking sharp details, full luster, untouched by circulation. Collectors call these mint state coins, and they're the holy grail of finds. The difference between a normal 25-cent piece and a $1 million miracle comes down to just two things: the absence of that mint mark and the coin's flawless preservation. That's it. That tiny oversight in 1968 created a rarity so powerful, it's rewriting the value of the Washington Quarter series. But there's another twist: not all no-mint mark coins are valuable. In fact, from 1965 to 1967, no U.S. coins carried mint marks at all, by official design. Many collectors confuse those years with 1968. But 1968 was different. Mint marks returned. Which means any 1968 coin without a mint mark is an error, and that error is worth a fortune. Think about the odds. Out of hundreds of millions of quarters struck that year, only a handful escaped the minting floor without their identifying letter. That's why when one surfaces, collectors fight tooth and nail to claim it. One dealer described it like this: finding a 1968 no-mint mark quarter in the wild would be like winning the lottery twice in one day. But the suspense doesn't end there, because every time one of these coins goes to auction, it seems to shatter expectations. $1 million here. Another 6 figures there. And the buzz just keeps growing. What will the next discovery sell for? $2 million? 3? Nobody knows, and that's why collectors across America are searching. Everyday hobbyists. Retirees with coin jars. Families sorting through decades-old change. Everyone's looking, because the chance of finding one life-changing coin is real. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on these rarities. Collectors whisper about them at conventions. And yet, most people still don't know they exist. Your best chance of finding one is closer than you think. Estate sales. Inherited collections. Old jars of change tucked away in closets. The 1968 no-mint mark quarter could be hiding anywhere, and every single time someone flips one over, hoping to see nothing below the date, hearts race, palms sweat, dreams ignite. Now let's slow down and get practical. If you want to identify this coin correctly, here's what you must do. Look directly beneath the date on the obverse, the front of the coin, where Washington's portrait is. In 1968, you should see a tiny mint mark, D4 Denver, or sometimes S4 San Francisco. But if it's blank, if there's nothing there, and if the coin is in mint condition, then you may be holding history. Be careful, though. Circulated coins, worn coins, or coins with damage won't carry the same staggering value. The $1 million examples are flawless. So before you assume you've struck gold, have it authenticated by a trusted grading service. They're the gatekeepers of truth in this world of hidden treasures, and here's one final thought to leave you with: most people will go their entire lives without ever looking closely at their change. They'll spend quarters without a second thought. They'll never know a fortune passed through their hands. But the collectors who pay attention, who take the time to look closer, they're the ones who discover miracles, because sometimes, destiny hides in plain sight.